this module, we'll learn about legal obligations when selling at auction, auction terms and conditions. The seller will have to have proof of ownership. That's generally done with the deed. If they have a mortgage on it, we'll need to have the deed of trust. If they're in an estate, it'll have to have the paper documenting that they're appointed to sell the assets of the estate. And the property can have a mortgage on it. It's just like a traditional selling method. The mortgage will be paid off prior to the transfer of the title from the proceeds from the auction sale itself. There's no responsibility for hazmats on the premises or any other environmental things that may have come up on the property after or before the auction. You must allow for an inspection of the property if asked. If a potential buyer wants to inspect the property, they may do so at their cost. The best thing about this sale is that the property is sold as is, where is. It's the most powerful words in real estate or any other type of property sale. Definition means the property is sold as you see it, where you see it, in its existing condition. That's the way you deliver it to the buyer on the day of the settlement. You don't have to worry about any walkthroughs saying if something's happened to the property. You just deliver the property in its existing condition as it was on auction day. You reveal what you know. What you don't know, you can't reveal. And you're not responsible for after the fact. Once you sell it at auction sale and say the septic system goes out, it is now the responsibility of the buyer to correct that default. All known defects in a traditional transaction are readily inspectable. The seller allows the buyer the right to inspect the property. If they want to buy the property and want an inspection, it's at their risk and expense. If something turns up and they desire not to go forward with the transaction, they don't have to bid at the auction sale. If they buy the property and then do an inspection prior to closing and something comes up that they're not satisfied with, it is not the seller's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the buyer to correct that to their satisfaction. The day of the auction sale, they put down a deposit that is non-refundable. It shows their intent to make an offer. Once they are the accepted bid, their deposit goes into escrow and they're not allowed to get it back if they change their mind on settling on the property. Our position is we don't show property, we sell property. You don't need to note latent defects. If you don't know anything about it, then you don't need to disclose it. If you do know something about the property, it is in your best interest to reveal what you do know so that you have a happy buyer and not a dissatisfied buyer. Now let's talk about terms and conditions of the auction sale. You guide your seller through this process, finding out how they want their property sold under what terms and conditions. First off, we have only bidders providing guaranteed funds may bid at the auction sale. They must have a cashier's check, certified funds, bank letter guarantee. Normally at the auction sale we're looking for 10% of the expected selling price as the amount of deposit for that day. The property is sold as is, where is, which is explained in the documentation that the bidder's information packet will have. Seller setting the terms and conditions will say, I'll settle in 30 days, or I want 60-day settlement, or I want a 90-day settlement. You really can be flexible in this part. We always recommend that they take the shortest time to settlement. That way the transaction goes through quickly. It's an all-cash transaction. This contract is not subject to seller or buyer financing. That means they come there knowing that they have the financing lined up, so that if they don't go through with the financing, meaning the lender, they will lose their deposit. Our contract is cash, not subject to. It's a non-contingent contract. It's not subject to house inspections. It's not subject to loans. It's not subject to appraisals. It's not subject to anything. What it is subject to is the seller will sell and the buyer will buy. We're selling it in an existing condition. As you see it on auction day is the way it'll be delivered to the buyer on settlement day. If something happens to the property during that time, from auction day to settlement day, the buyer must make sure that they have insurance, which they're advised to do, homeowner's insurance, to cover any problem that may happen. There have been cases where the property has burned down. Unfortunately, the buyer is still obligated to go through with the transaction. No extra cost to the seller. This is a buyer pay everything, all transfer costs. Whatever is necessary to take that property from seller name to buyer's name is paid for by the buyer.